Now that's interesting. This podcast is about the Georgia Tech Sam Nunn School of International Affairs. Its graduates, their careers, and how the Nunn School has helped to shape their future. Take a listen. Welcome back to Now That's Interesting. I'm Stephanie Jackson.
And I'm Sydney Pawanka.
And in this episode today, we are continuing our discussions with Nunn School alumni that completed their degrees with minors in STEM-related fields. And today, we would like to welcome Aarij Abbas, who finished with a degree in Economics and International Affairs, that's our EIA degree, and a minor in biology.
And while at Georgia Tech, Aarij participated in multiple organizations, including the Theta Chi fraternity, serving as president and house manager, the Georgia Tech Student Ambassadors, and the Ivan Allen College Ambassadors. In addition, Aarij was a research assistant at the Center for European Studies, an intern at the International Rescue Committee, and a legislative intern at Georgia Link Public Affairs Group. Following graduation, Aarij was the senior aide in the Georgia General Assembly, a Peace Corps volunteer, a communications fellow for the Fair Fight Action, and is now an assistant PR representative for the Veritas Group.
Thank you for joining us today, Aarij.
Thank you guys so much. It's great to be here.
You have really had a wide variety of experiences, and we want to hear more about all of those, but we would like to begin our conversation today by talking about your major and minor choices. So if you can remember back when you came to Tech, what was your major?
So when I first enrolled in Tech, my major was the International Affairs and Modern Languages major, with Russian being my modern language. And I was a summer session student, and I actually, during my registration, switched to Economics and International Affairs and decided to take Russian on the side instead.
Okay, so you decided to switch to the EIA degree with Russian as your language, but what made you decide to choose to pursue the minor in biology?
It's something that I always really enjoyed. It was my favorite science in high school, and one of the options I was considering after school was a public health degree and a public health track, and I thought, a biology minor would be a step in that direction. And I just really love biology, and I had the extra credit hours, I had the availability, so that's why I decided to take it. It was really a because I can kind of decision.
Well, that's a good choice. I mean, that's a good reason. Like you said, you had that flexibility in your degree to pursue other interests, which is what we want to see our students do. So did you see any overlap between your EIA degree and your biology minor at all?
Not strictly like in the coursework, of course, but my biology minor did help me gain a few perspectives on just global affairs, especially global health affairs. And I think it really helped when I joined Peace Corps more than anything, because health is a major part of every Peace Corps volunteer's mission. And so just having even a foundation of biology, like basic biology knowledge, really helped me understand some of the issues that we were talking about on the ground there.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're going to come back to talking about your journey towards Peace Corps. My final question about your minor is, in terms of thinking about back when you were pursuing the minor, did that impact any of the other decisions you made about other classes that you might take, maybe within INTA or other electives, or did it help shape your thoughts about internships in any way?
I did spend a lot of time looking for internships that were kind of more in the public health field. I was not ultimately successful in that, but I think it helped my course selection and kind of that thought process, and just reminding me that there's so much else to learn out there, and that if I have the time and the energy to the ability to do that, the privilege to do that, really, because I know so many students at Georgia Tech, don't have time to, engage in other coursework, then I should, because there's, no such thing as, in my opinion, it's one of the things that I really like to do. So it encouraged me to look outside of my field.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's so great that you've been able to have that experience throughout your minor. And so now we're going to move a little bit on to some of the internships that you have held. And so you were an intern at the International Rescue Committee. And what was your role during this
I
internship?
was on the economic empowerment team supporting them, and so that team's role is to find help refugees on this side, on the U.S. side, once they get here, help them find work, help them build their resumes, help them find education programs. Honestly, I mean, the overarching mission is to help them find economic stability so that they can be providing for themselves and their families here.
Yeah, and so I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but where did you see any of your either EIA or biology coursework overlap with this internship?
Yeah, I think especially the EIA coursework did overlap quite a bit, just from the standpoint that in international affairs we do study refugees a lot, and like those crises, and seeing people that have been displaced, talking to them. I was interviewing refugees on a daily basis to learn about what they did in their home countries and what kind of skills they had, so that we had a better idea of what kind of jobs to look for. It really gave me a lot of clarity into what we're actually talking about when we talk about refugees and migrant populations. So I think that's the biggest overlap there.
What advice do you have for students who may be interested in either working at the International Rescue Committee or other similar nonprofit organizations?
I think this one does get thrown around a lot, but just, send in your applications all the time, because honestly, the International Rescue Committee was one of like 100 applications that I filled out that summer, and I didn't even remember applying until I got the interview. So that, and look high and low. I'd say look at home too. Even if you're an international affairs student, there's so many organizations in Atlanta that are doing development work. If you want to go into a nonprofit field, any kind of development experience is going to be super useful. So if you see mutual aid groups or any kind of groups that are trying to help the people of Atlanta, even that experience is going to be pretty useful, pretty invaluable as well. So don't limit yourself to the big name nonprofits that everyone tries to go for.
I think that's really helpful advice because you're right. Sometimes it's these smaller organizations that really need, the labor support to get some of the work done. And so if students can either intern or volunteer with these smaller organizations, they might even rise up within those organizations into get promoted into a different position, or would certainly be a stepping stone to get into some of the larger organizations at a later point in their career path. So it's a really good point you bring up. I want to ask you now about some of your positions and your time exploring the political system in Georgia. So, as a student, you were a legislative intern with Georgia Link Public Affairs Group. And
Yes.
then once you graduated, you held a position as a Senate aide with the Georgia General Assembly. So, tell us a little bit about each of these experiences.
Yes. So my internship with the Georgia Link Public Affairs Group was my first exposure to state and local politics, and it was invaluable in teaching me like the power of state and local government, because it's honestly something that is not talked about in school, in college, like in any of our courses, any of my courses. But and so I think that was my biggest takeaway, was just how much power these people have over the lives of Georgians, and getting to see that system work up close was very eye-opening,
Mhm.
very fast-paced, enjoyable, but also, um, a little troubling at times, seeing the way our state government works, or any government works. And I went back as a Senate aide just to have a different perspective from the state government side, because Georgia Link is a lobbying group, and so I wanted to like a more inside perspective. And it was nice. I mean, it was fun being on the Senate floor. I got to meet some pretty interesting state senators and some Senate staffers, and um, got some more clarity. It helped me position, like, center my beliefs more, and gave me a little more encouragement that what I believe should be pursued and can be fought for, like at the state and local level.
So, what influence did any of those roles have in your pursuing a communications fellowship with Verified Action later on in your career?
Yes, so I think for a little bit of perspective, so I got evacuated from Peace Corps around like in 2019, and then coronavirus happened, and I was kind of um, floating around looking for, honestly looking for work. And I saw this fellowship come across. It just caught my eye as I was looking for jobs and stuff, and I have always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed communications a bit, just on the side for my personal level. And I applied. I sent in my resume, and I got a call back. They did we did a writing sample, and a full test. And yeah, I was lucky enough to get that fellowship. It was an awesome experience.
So, what were your responsibilities? What did you do in that role?
I supported the communications team for Verified Action, and a lot of that involved I got to take the first stab at drafting talking points for Stacey Abrams and Lauren Forgo, the CEO of Fair Fight, and I got to draft press briefings. So, Stacey Abrams has a lot of press coverage. She does a lot of interviews, and so I got that, and I just supported. Yeah, I kind of got to do the first pass at everything when there was time enough to give me that opportunity, and then I would get feedback, and it's really to help me grow in that kind of communication field, just build my skill set. And my bosses were great at giving feedback in that.
Mm-hmm. So, did you find that, your undergraduate major or minor helped prepare you for that in any way?
Yes, I mean, I think international, that my major and minor have not too much to do with what I'm doing now, but the skills I built pursuing that major, mostly the research and writing skills that I developed
Mm-hmm.
during my international affairs degree, have helped a lot, because a lot of my role now is doing research and writing, like, kind of briefings, reports, and like digging through the internet to find information that's useful for whatever work I'm doing at the time. And that was definitely built off of writing all those papers when I was an international affairs student.
Mm-hmm. So, if you could give any words of advice to students who might be thinking about pursuing internships or a career path in politics, what would you say would be some good advice for that?
In politics, I think I would say do not limit yourself to the mainstream institutions, especially if they don't align with what you believe in. Um, there are so many organizations that aren't readily available, or you don't hear about them every day, but these small niche organizations are might be doing more impactful work, and if they're more in line with the work that you want to do, then put in the extra time to find them, instead of settling for, like, uh establishment institution of some kind.
Yeah, I definitely think that trying to pursue your interests when you find those internships is super important. And so going back a little bit to your time on campus at Georgia Tech, so you were both a part of the Georgia Tech Student Ambassadors and the Ivan Allen
Yes.
College Ambassadors. And so tell us a little bit about each of these
Sure.
experiences.
So I think Ivan Allen Student Ambassadors was a great experience, very near and dear to my heart, because I got to help. That organization does a lot of high school outreach, and the main goal is to get more students who are pursuing the liberal arts into Georgia Tech. And I got to talk with students who had been in the same position I had been in high school, which was, oh, do I want to go to Georgia Tech? It's a STEM school. It's all math and science. I don't like math and science. Um, and so I got to have conversations with those kids and help them, just give them more information about what liberal arts at Georgia Tech means. And that's why I honestly enjoyed all the events we did, all the tours I gave for that. Georgia Tech Student Ambassadors was a little bit different. It's geared a lot more towards kind of alumni relations, but also external relations. So there were tours and more so just lots of events involving alumni and other significant people. So that was also enjoyable. I got to meet I made some good friends through Georgia Tech Ambassadors, and I got to give tours to some great alumni, learn a lot about their time at Georgia Tech. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome that you had those amazing experiences while on campus. And I think you touched a little bit on this, but how did having these positions as the Georgia Tech Student Ambassador and as an Ivan Allen College Ambassador impact what choices you made while at Georgia Tech, either in some of the opportunities you pursued for internships or in your coursework?
So I think as far as internships, these organizations kind of just gave me a network, all the other people that are kind of in the same boat as me, as far as we're all looking for internships and stuff. So it's a great way to exchange information. Just like, oh, I saw this opening, I think you should apply, et cetera, et cetera. And as far as some of the choices it influenced while on campus, I think it kind of kept me on campus a lot and involved with the things that were happening in Georgia Tech. It like drew my focus towards those current events, situations, whatever was going on campus at the time, as opposed to me perhaps being more engaged outside in the city of Atlanta a little bit more. And so I am grateful for like all of those experiences, but I wish that I had spent a little more time looking out into like the rest of the city, I think.
Yeah, and so what advice would you give for students who may want to get involved in similar organizations on campus while they're at Georgia Tech?
Always apply, even if you think you're not qualified. Again, with Georgia Tech Student Ambassadors, it was something I applied to not really expecting a lot out of it, and like I didn't expect it to go anywhere. But I got it, and it was a great experience. So don't be afraid of like what if I get rejected, etc. Like nobody cares. Everyone gets rejected from lots of things in their life. And again, I'll repeat this one. Don't settle for something that seems more prestigious or seems like it's a better spot on your resume. I think, if I had to go back and do it again, there are probably more or different organizations that I would focus my energies on and apply to join and get involved in that work. Because I see looking back that they would have helped me develop some of the skills that I'm finding I need now, or some of the experiences I wish I'd had.
Okay, so now let's talk Peace Corps.
Okay.
I do remember you being very interested in the Peace Corps. I remember that. So you mentioned a little bit earlier how you were evacuated, but first let's talk about what drew your interest to Peace Corps.
It just seemed like a very fascinating opportunity to, go and work in another country, get some really cool skills, some really useful skills and experiences. I will say, my expectations for Peace Corps, like it's not what I expected going in, but it was a great experience. It was just something I always had in the back of my head. Like I said, I did mention it to you, Stephanie, I'm sure a few times. And when it got to my last semester and everyone around me was applying for jobs, and I was like, oh man, what do I do now? Like Peace Corps, okay, let's do it. I can't figure out like you know,
Hmm.
what else? But this is a good stepping stone to basically any career.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got there.
So what role did they place you in? And you were in Liberia, is that correct?
Yes, I was in Liberia as an education volunteer, and so my
Gotcha.
role, we were the first group of volunteers to teach English literacy.
Hmm.
So not spoken English, but reading and writing, because like English is the national language of Liberia, but the literacy rate is needs some help, and so that was what we were doing. It was a really fascinating experience. I love teaching. It was great.
So at that time, you were finishing up your EIA degree, and you also had your minor in biology. Had you initially thought about maybe using that minor in biology or some sort of health-created placement might be better suited for you?
Yes, and that was one of the sectors I put as my preferred. I put education, economic development, and health as my preferred sectors when I filled out my application. But I
Hmm.
also didn't want to limit myself by just putting health or just putting economics, which is why I chose to put all three and, leave myself open to the possibility that um, I might be better off in a different position that Peace Corps wants me in. Um, and so they did. And I still got to use some of my health and economic background
Hmm.
uh, while serving in Peace Corps. So that was nice.
So you said earlier that you were evacuated. So how long did you actually serve?
I only served for 6 months before we got evacuated.
So you served for 6 months. Did you have your 3 month training also?
Okay, I guess I'm counting my 3 month training. So I served for 3 months. I was only at site on my site for 3 months, and I had my 3 month training before that. So yeah, that was very unfortunate. When I got back to the US, I immediately applied to a different country because this was not a COVID related evacuation. This was a few months before that.
Hmm.
Um, so I applied again and I got accepted into Peace Corps Paraguay, but then coronavirus happened and Peace Corps issued its like first worldwide evacuation,
Yeah,
uh, which I'm sure made the news a lot.
yeah,
So
it did. So thinking back to your time when you were applying for Peace Corps or considering it, um, any advice you have for students who might be thinking about Peace Corps?
um, if you think you're going to like change your community's life or be like a savior, if that's what you want to do, this is not the organization for you at all. It takes a lot of like, you need to be very humble if you are going to go into Peace Corps, and you might be disappointed like in what you find there. So just don't have any like set in stone expectations when you apply. And just remember, it's not about you; it's about the community you're serving. So yeah, I think that would be my biggest piece of advice. And the second, again, don't go to the countries that you think are like going to be the most fun. Don't limit yourself. Just leave
Mhm.
yourself open to some possibilities.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and so moving on to your current position. So currently you're working as an assistant PR
Yes.
representative at Veritas Group. And so tell us about what your role is
Okay.
in this position.
So I'm a assistant public relations representative, and my role is half administrative, half public relations, for like client related. So, the administrative side is we're a pretty small firm, and so we rely on the people in my role to kind of do a lot of the like keeping the Google Drive organized, making sure all the like emails get triaged, etc. Like doing some of the administrative stuff that every firm needs to keep running. And then on the other side, we also get to work with clients and we're in on all client meetings. Our input is greatly valued, and I do a lot of media press relations for a couple clients. So setting up interviews with reporters, um, making sure we're being covered well in the news. Our clients are being covered well in the news. Event production. A lot of these clients, now everything is virtual, so we're doing virtual events for fundraisers or awareness, whatever we do. We're a top to bottom PR firm, and so we do really anything in that scope that the client needs. And there's a lot of different work that I've been a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so have you seen any overlap between either what you study in economics or in international affairs or biology
A little
throughout this
bit, and
position?
just because some of the clients, the work they do is related to like economics everywhere, right? So that economic education gives me a little bit of strength, a little foundation to work with. And I think other than that, again, the skills that I built during my degree, like the research and writing skills, are the biggest contribution for sure. But occasionally, like the knowledge, the curriculum also comes into play.
Yeah, I think that's great that you emphasize that not only can it be directly related, but also just the skills that you're building through what you learn either at the Nunn School or in biology
Yeah.
directly apply. So that's awesome. And then what advice do you have for students who may be interested in pursuing similar positions?
So I think the PR and marketing area is fairly competitive, but there's also just so many opportunities out there. So it'll take, again, like a lot of maybe a lucky break to get your foot in the door. I think in the meantime, what I would say is don't be afraid to like build your writing skills and build a portfolio, even if it's for free. I hate the idea of free labor, but unfortunately, in the world we live in, sometimes that is the case. That like that's what you have to do to showcase your skill set. So there's plenty of blogs out there that like to have volunteer writers, and so if the PR work is some marketing work is something you want to do, and you want your writing to be a part of it, write for those blogs. If it's kind of events or something else, volunteer for organizations. I got into communications because I was volunteering for a political startup, and they gave me their like social media, and I started writing copy. And so just volunteer and try to build a portfolio that shows kind of, what you can do, and if possible, get paid for building that portfolio. But just know that that might not always happen.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up quickly. We just have a couple last questions. I want you to just consider if or how having this minor in biology has impacted the trajectory of your coursework, your internships, your career path. And you mentioned initially that you were interested in pursuing possibly public health. So what looks different, or what is different from how you imagined your career path when you initially began studying biology and economics and international affairs?
I think a lot looks different. I imagine myself when I first started in college, I imagined myself at, a big nonprofit or international institution like the WHO or the State Department or the UN, etc. And slowly through a number of experiences, realized that, that is not what I want to do, even if that's what I set out to do back when I was like 18 or 19. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think just I did not imagine that this is what I would be doing when I started college at all. Um,
Yeah.
but I have no regrets. I actually really love the work that I'm doing now. Even if it has very little to do with what I studied, I don't consider that to be like a wasted education. I learned a lot of great skills and a lot about the world through my education. And, it does come into play like all the time. So yeah, I think that answers your question. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
So I would say my last question for you, if there are any last words of advice that you would have for a student who may be where you were, they started at Georgia Tech, they're studying international affairs, they may have a STEM related minor in some way.
Uh-huh.
What advice would you have for that person going forward?
I think more than anything, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do right now. That is perfectly fine because I didn't even when I had graduated, and just go with your gut, go with your heart in terms of what is right for you in that moment of your life, because not everything you plan can be long term, and it's good to have like a general long term plan, but I think if you get too specific, you're closing yourself off to opportunities that you have never even imagined, and don't do that. Leave the door open for anything to kind of happen.
I think that's a perfect end to this interview. Thank you, Aarij,
Thank
for
you guys
joining
so
us
much.
today.
Yeah, thank
Good.
you. It was great to be here. Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, Sydney. And yeah, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it's been an insightful conversation, and I think your tips about not limiting yourself and having encouraging students to follow their interests and develop their skills are really important um, for them to hear. So thank you again for joining us. We hope you're staying safe and healthy, and we hope to be hearing more about your future successes real soon.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs at Georgia Tech, developing policymakers for the 21st century. Music is Afternoon Nap by Ghost Rifter Official, used under a Creative Commons Attribution, Share Alike 3.0, unported license.